What's up, everybody? Matt Moda here to give you my favorite NFL player prop picks. We're talking the NFL Saturday betting slate. We got 2 games on tap for Saturday. I'm going to have 3 NBA player prop picks for you guys to lock in. Of course, one of those is being laddered to very juicy odds because that's how we do things here. To give you guys a recap of how things have gone so far, Week 17 ended up being pretty good. We ended on a little bit of a down note on Monday, but if you just look at the entire week of Week 17, very, very pleased with how things went. We were up about 4.6 units, I think is the exact number. We were up somewhere around there on the entire week. That now brings our profit on the entire season. We are up over 36 units on the year. We're up over 19% ROI on the year as well. Very, very pleased with how things are going. As I mentioned, I'm going to have 3 player props for you guys to lock in for the Saturday NFL betting slate. Remember to like the video, remember to comment, remember to subscribe, and all that good stuff. And let's get right into it. We can just start talking right about the first play. So what I'm going to start doing moving forward for my NFL picks at least is kind of walk you through the tools that I use when I'm giving out my picks. So instead of just me talking to you at a camera, you can actually see exactly what I'm talking about. So the first play that we are locking in here is Jeudy over 51.5 receiving yards. So I was able to get it at 49.5. That's what I sent out to my Dub Club. I would still take it at the 51.5 number as well. Now I get taking a receiving yards prop on the Browns with DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, as a starting quarterback. Sounds a little bit scary, but I'm here to tell you that things are not as bad as they seem, even with DTR as the quarterback. So what I'm going to do, and I'm looking at outlier.bet, great website, to give you guys historical data and some context and analysis around that. So we're going to do, this is the entire season of Jeudy. Looks pretty good. He's hit over 51.5 in 10 of 16 games. He's averaging about 73 receiving yards per game. But we want to look at it specifically with DTR as a starting quarterback because obviously games with Jameis Winston aren't really helpful. So we're going to look at games specifically with Dorian Thompson-Robinson as a starting quarterback, because he's most likely going to start in this game. And he's still gone over in 4 of 6 starts, right? So things still look pretty good with DTR as a starting quarterback. Obviously, 142 yards against the Saints was good. Gross start here against the Bengals when Deshaun Watson played the majority of that game, actually, and that's the game he got hurt in. Now, this game here, the Chiefs, was a game where Jameis Winston played the majority of that game and got benched. But what we see here is that even if we take out the Chiefs game and we take out the Bengals game, he's gone over this number in 3 of 4 starts. Now, one gross one against the Bengals, it happens. But last week, 94 receiving yards went well above the number that we're asking him to do. And what I really, really like to see here are his target numbers. So we can ignore the 6 target game against the Bengals, because again, that was mostly Deshaun Watson. And sure, let's take out this Chiefs game because that was mostly Jameis Winston. Even in the other games, 18 targets. Even DTR, who's not a good quarterback, 18 targets is phenomenal. 3 targets against the Bengals, not great. 6 against the Steelers, perfectly acceptable. And then 11 targets, an amazing number. We're only asking this guy to get over 51.5 receiving yards as opposed to anything that crazy, right? Like Jamar Chase, we're asking him to get 100. We'll talk about that a little bit later. 51.5 is completely reasonable for Jeudy, especially when you consider the matchup. The Ravens are a team that we have targeted all year for receiving props, for passing props, all that stuff. It's still been the case recently. And also what you could do on Outlier is, let's see, the Ravens are allowing the 4th most receiving yards per game, specifically to wide receivers at about 170.5 per game. Another website that I like to look at for that number is just lineups.com. And it's the same thing here. We're looking at receiving stats allowed to wide receivers. The Ravens have allowed the 4th most on the entire year. And that's held true most of the year as well. Let's just look at the data since week 7. Since week 7, the Ravens are allowing, the 7th most receiving yards per game. So not quite as good as the 4th most, but still pretty good. Still definitely not a defense that we are scared of for receiving props. And Jeudy at this point is the number 1 target for the Browns offense, right? It was Amari Cooper at the beginning of the year, maybe Cedric Tillman for a little bit, but Jeudy is the number 1 option on this offense. And what you can look at on DVOA is how teams guard number 1 receiving options. How good are they at guarding the opposing team's number 1 wide receiver? And the Ravens are not good at guarding the opposing team's wide receiver 1. If we just filter this, so these are the best defenses and these are the worst. So the Ravens are the 3rd worst defense in the NFL guarding wide receiver number 1s. And we can actually look at how many yards they give up to wide receiver 1s and literally giving up the most. So the Ravens have allowed more yards than any other team to opposing number 1 wide receivers. Now, of course, Ja'Marr Chase going off against you for 200 yards is going to inflate those numbers a little bit, but it's not just Ja'Marr Chase. You go through the game logs, you see a lot of wide receiver ones hitting their receiving prop over against the Ravens. They're a great combination. You cannot run on them. You can pass on them, and their offense is good enough that teams are always needing to throw. So wide receiver props are absolutely have been a play against the Ravens all year. I see no reason why that won't continue. So I like backing Jeudy as our first play of the day. Again, over 51.5 receiving yards, -110 odds at the best offered price. I was able to get it at 49.5. I would still take it at over 51.5 as well as our first play of the video. All right, for our second play, we're going to go with Ja'Marr Chase, 100 plus receiving yards. +116 odds is the best offered price. I actually got this at a +110, so you can get a little bit of a better price than I got. But I love this play backing Ja'Marr Chase to get to 100 receiving yards. Now, looking at his stats, he's only done this in 5 games this year, which admittedly is a little bit scary. But 4 of the 5 games he's done it were actually with T. Higgins in the lineup. So again, if we're going to go games with T. Higgins, and we look at just games with T. Higgins, we see that 4 of the games in which he's hit 100 yards, 4 of the 5 have been with T. Higgins in the lineup. And he's actually averaging about 105 receiving yards per game in games that he's played with T. Higgins. Now, the reason why we love backing Ja'Marr Chase is because he has these absolute blow-up potential type of games. We're talking 193 yards against the Bengals, 177 yards against the Cowboys, and his floor is pretty good too. I mean, he came close, 97, 94. This is a game that the Bengals absolutely have to win, and so do the Steelers. We're going to get into a play that I have for the Steelers, but these teams are going to be trying to win the game. Of course, I mean, obviously teams are trying to be win, but like this is winning in. This is full stop. So they're going to give Ja'Marr Chase a ton of targets in this one. And just looking at his target volume, I mean, 12, 13, 9, 18, 11, 8, 15. And he has an average yards per reception of 15.3. Longest reception, 40.5 is his average. Like he just has these monster games, monster plays. And you can throw on the Steelers. Like looking at some of the matchups here, this is per PFF. Let me zoom in a little bit here. This just looks at like the wide receiver versus the cornerbacks. Ja'Marr Chase has the second best matchup advantage of any wide receiver in the entire NFL this week. Now, T. Higgins on the same team also does have a good matchup advantage against the Steelers, but Ja'Marr Chase has the second best. And you can throw on the Steelers. I mean, I'm just looking through the game log of wide receivers and how they fared against the Steelers. Last week, 4 of the 5 receivers with props hit their receiving yards over against the Steelers. The only one that didn't was DeAndre Hopkins, who had a gross game. I mean, 7 yards on 35.5 under is not great. But Justin Watson had 60, over under 0.5. Juju, the over 18, had 18 yards, over under was 3.5. Xavier Worthy had 79, over under 49.5. Hollywood Brown had 46, over under of 35.5. Again, 4 of the 5 receivers on the Chiefs hit their receiving prop over. And then let's look at the Ravens. Zay Flowers, their number 1 receiver, had 100 receiving yards. The week before against the Eagles, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith both hit their receiving prop over against the Steelers. And Ja'Marr Chase, I mean, he did hit his over last game against the Steelers. Now, he only had 86 yards, so he did not get to the 100 number. But his over-under in this one is like his main line is at like 92.5. I just like pumping that up to get to 100 yards at the plus money price. And Ja'Marr Chase, everybody knows Ja'Marr Chase is having obviously an awesome season. I mean, we go to receiving yards per game. He's averaging the most receiving yards per game at 100.8. So on the season, he's averaging over 100 yards per game. And the last game of the year, the Bengals need to win to make the playoffs. It's not guaranteed if they win that they do make the playoffs, but they still do need to win to make the playoffs. They're going to give him a ton of targets in this one. They should be able to have a lot of success doing so because, I mean, just look at what teams have done against the Steelers this year. So as their second play, I absolutely love Ja'Marr Chase to get to 100 plus receiving yards. Again, +116 odds is now the best offered price that you can get it at. All right, and for our third and final pick of the video, we're going to go with a Pat Freiermuth receiving yards ladder. So what we're going to do is we're going to take him to go 40 plus receiving yards. This is best offered at +126 odds at Caesars. But we're also going to take him to get 50 plus receiving yards. Also best offered at Caesars. This one is at +230. And we are taking him to go 60 plus, which you can get at +400 odds at Caesars. These are pretty close to the numbers that I gave out to my Dub Club, so you're not missing anything on this YouTube video. But as you can tell, I absolutely love Pat Freiermuth in this game against the Bengals. Obviously, we're sticking in the same game, Bengals versus Steelers. And first of all, the Bengals are absolutely a defense that you want to target for tight end receiving props. This is looking at the same website, lineups.com, looking at receiving yards allowed specifically to tight ends. And as you can see, on the entire season, since week 1, the Bengals have allowed 64.3 receiving yards per game, which is the third most in the entire NFL. But they've been worse as the season has gone on. So let's look at week 9. Since week 9, they're actually allowing the second most receiving yards per game, specifically to tight ends, at 71.2 yards per game. So everything has gone up from week 1 to week 9, which just means that recently they've gotten worse. And Pat Freiermuth has been fine. He's having an okay season. He's only hit 40 yards in 6 of 16 games, which that doesn't sound amazing, but he's been much better with Russell Wilson. So if we look at the games that he's played specifically with Russell Wilson, we see that he's done it in 5 of 10 games, which means that only one of the games with Justin Fields did he go over 40 or more receiving yards. And if you look at the games he went over, he either wasn't getting close or he was getting over the second leg of the ladder, right? I mean, he had 48 yards in one game, but then we see the second leg, 51, 59, almost getting to the second leg, and then 68 full ladder climb, 60 full ladder climb. And what I like about backing him with Russell Wilson is you see his best game with Russell Wilson was 68 receiving yards. Again, 5 of the games he hit 40 plus. But if we go to games without Russell Wilson and we look at how he performed in those, so these are basically just games with Justin Fields. He only hit the over in 1 of 6 games, and he never hit 60 yards once, and he had 57 in that one. But I mean, came close one time with 39, but really not good. And if you look at his targets, averaging about 4 targets per game with Justin Fields. But then again, we want to look at how he performed with Russell Wilson. And you're going to see a lot of things were better. More receiving yards per game at 37, hit 40 yards in 5 of 10 games. And he's averaging, especially recently, like at the beginning, he didn't do so hot, but recently, 7 targets, 6 targets, 8 targets, much better recently. And one thing I want to show you, let's look at one of the games. The game where he had the most receiving yards per game, 68 receiving yards. Look who it was against. It was against the Cincinnati Bengals. So the last time these two teams played was a season high in receiving yards for Pat Freiermuth. We also targeted Pat Freiermuth last week against the Chiefs, another team that you want to target for tight end receiving props. Like, look, the Chiefs allow the third most since week 9. Pat Freiermuth would have cashed the full ladder last week with 60 receiving yards. So he had a good game, his first game against the Bengals. Let's look at how he did against the Bengals last year. So we look at head-to-head. He had a game against the Bengals last year where he had 120 receiving yards. Now, one game he had 0. That game was not so fun. He had, I think he was hurt actually in that game. He didn't play at all. But last year, obviously different quarterback, different situation. I get it. But he had 11 targets, 11 targets, 9 receptions for over 100 yards. Yeah, he's probably not going to hit 100. But in his first game against the Bengals this year was also a game with Russell Wilson. 68 receiving yards, 7 targets, and 6 receptions. So I absolutely love Pat Freiermuth in this one. In this one, I love him as our third and final pick of the video. And that is all we got. 3 picks for you guys to lock in for this NFL Saturday betting slate, one of which we are climbing a juicy ladder. Appreciate everybody for watching. Now, if you're interested in signing up for Outlier, there's a link to that in the description of the video as well as the pinned comment. So check that out. If you want to support the channel, check out the Dub Club. If you want to support the channel and have all my plays sent to your phone for $5 a month. I appreciate everybody for watching. And to confirm the plays, I should say, Jeudy receiving yards, I got him over 49.5. We're going with Jamar Chase, 100 plus receiving yards. I got him at plus 110. And then we're going with Pat Freiermuth, 40 plus, 50 plus, and 60 plus receiving yards as our 3 plays for the weekend plus the ladder climb. Appreciate everybody for watching and have a good one.